Welcome to the Marketing for the Culture podcast, powered by the African American Marketing Association. Each week, we'll bring you an insightful conversation from some of the best experts in our industry on how to advance our career. Join the collective of Black marketers across the world, advancing their brand as we work towards creating a collaborative community. Hey, good people. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing for the Culture podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Gomez, and today's special guest is Falayn Ferrell. How are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we've known each other for quite some time. I know you're crushing it here in Houston, Texas, nationwide. But for those that don't know, please tell the people about yourself.
Yes. So hi, my name is Falayn. I am one of the managing partners for Black Restaurant Week. We are a national brand awareness platform for Black-owned culinary businesses. We have over 1,700 businesses in our database that we highlight throughout the year, hosting Restaurant Week campaigns, culinary events, corporate activations, really just to kind of help bring that spotlight to the diversity going on in the culinary scene. A lot of the businesses that we really support really just don't have the dollars to do marketing campaigns themselves or hire publicists or do a lot of the other things that we do. So we really like to help alleviate all of those costs off their shoulders, really just to kind of like show that we're doing just as much in the culinary space as other ethnic groups. And, I think that's kind of the beauty of what we see. We also have a nonprofit foundation called Feed the Soul, which I'm the chairwoman of. And that kind of steps in where Black Restaurant Week leaves off, where Feed the Soul really is all about business development. So teaching the restaurant owners everything from their financials, marketing, as well as other areas of business development, because the conversation is, we could come and showcase who you are, but if your business is still bad, your operations are still going to close before the next year. So, what are those things we could do just to really help kind of show them some of the other things that are going on in their business so that they could thrive and grow and sustain.
Yeah, I love it. It's a very holistic approach to what y'all are doing. Mm-hmm. So how did you get started into marketing?
So college, really. I went to FAM, and I remember I went to FAM minoring in MIS, Management Information Systems, and I just really more so had a heart for marketing. I was one of those students that was like, I don't want to do marketing because it doesn't pay enough, right? But I just came back around, and honestly, my favorite course I took was advertising class, where they broke us up into our own little mini advertising, I would say, agencies, where we had to come up with our agency name, and we had to actually run a marketing campaign for the U.S. Department of State, showing people different career opportunities on campus. So I just think that exposure really was like, okay, this is really what I like to do, what I want to do. And, I worked in corporate in New Jersey and pharmaceutical, but I was on the development side, so that was not hitting it for me. And so I relocated back to Houston and joined the Urban League and met Derek Robinson, my other business partner, and really just grinding, I would say, just kind of doing branding and being a part of the community. Like everything just kind of happened to this moment. And, when I look back, I would always tell this story of how I got into Black Restaurant Week to pay legacy to my father, because he was a chef and all that. But when I started one day to look back at my own life, I worked at restaurants in high school and college, everything from hostess to, wait staff. And then when I looked at all the marketing work I did, it really kind of was this aha, like, oh no, God, this was your destined path. Like God really set you up. So it's really kind of interesting now that I'm able to own my journey. I think, so all of the thoughts, I was like, why am I doing this? But now it all kind of makes sense.
I love it. I love it. See, what was I going to ask you? Are you a graphic designer by trade?
So that was a learned thing too. When I moved back to Houston, I actually started taking classes at HCC because what happened was I had an eye for design, but I didn't know how to use the software. And so that was really the power of me and Derek. Like I could do the website development stuff, but he's such a naturally gifted designer. And so I literally invested in taking classes at HCC, which I recommend to anyone now. I'm like, it's straightforward. You really learn everything. And then while Black Restaurant Week was growing, I actually was working as a graphic designer at Community Impact newspaper. Mm-hmm. And so I don't ever want to draw another map again. But it was a great, and so now if you see our deck, it has all these infographics and it's a lot of things that, like I said, everything it leads up to a moment and you don't know why you're going through that. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to pull that into my business. And so, but yeah, so, that really was where I was able to like tighten up my design skills. And so because Black Restaurant Week is set up like a marketing campaign, the first couple of years, Derek and I really invested a lot in the branding. And I think that's really what grew the project. People, I don't want to say this, but, you'll see a lot of events and stuff in our community where it visually just didn't look up to par from a branding perspective. And so we were very intentional about what we did. And we also didn't want the restaurants, like you may have a high-end restaurant that has the full staff that could do the graphics and the custom menus. But then you may have like a barbecue restaurant that, and it's like, how do we make sure when we showcase everyone to the community, they're all on the same level and there's no like, this one looks better than that one. So we were just intentional about doing a lot of things to make sure that everyone was on the same playing field. So the branding and the graphic design played a huge role in that.
I love it. So now I feel like you're, full throttle strategist, high level. So I guess, do you prefer that at this point?
We work with designers, but we're still very hands-on. I think, I'm happy, right? I mean, I don't have the time to just sit down and do the design, but most people wouldn't know visually looking at our branding that we have been outsourcing things. And it's really a blessing to bring people along our path that we've met. Like our designer, Ashley, that we use. I met her literally years ago at a Cadillac activation, just sitting, we sat down and we're talking. She's like, I do web design. I was like, I do it too. And I was like, okay, cool. And like literally several years ago. And when the opportunity came, I called her. It was just like, hey, are you interested? So I love being able to pull creatives that we meet along the way. Like that's probably, I would say, the proudest thing that we do, I think, is being able to, whether it's photographers, videographers, graphic designers, like being able to also give back to Black-owned businesses that way, where we're using our vendors that way. And I love that part.
So I want to go back a bit to the idea of Black Restaurant Week. Where did the idea come from? And I guess, was there a gap in the market, be it local or national? And how were you able to identify that and then create what it is now?
Yes, so Warren Luckett kind of pitched the idea to Derek and I and a few others. Him and his father had a wine distribution company. And so he had been working a lot with the restaurant space and the bar space and just, saw the opening of being able to create a platform for that community. He was also part of the Greater Houston Black Chamber. So I just think it all just kind of aligned in conversations. That was right around the first wave of just that Buy Black and police injustice and all that was going on. And Derek and I had literally just pitched that summer to do a Buy Black campaign with the Greater Houston Black Chamber. And everything just kind of aligned. So I think it was that questioning of like, we know there are businesses in our community. We just don't know where they are to support them. And so we did it so well. The first year was 1 week. It was 20 businesses. Chef Holly came to us at the end of the week and was like, next year, make it 2. I was like, oh, I guess we're on to something. And we've literally been growing ever since. This is the first year where we haven't added a new market, which is insane. So for the past 7 years, every year we've been adding new regions. And this is the first year we're just sitting and like being able to, really hone into these markets. But yeah.
So I think that's an interesting period when it comes to growth, right? Because when we're trying to grow, it's like we're trying to add on. So do you feel like because you're probably in the majority of major cities, definitely major Black cities, it's like, okay, let's just kind of go deep versus wide right now?
Yeah, I definitely, because what happens is like Houston, it's our 8th year, and that was the part of the growing pains. Like we would go into other markets and feel like, quote unquote, we failed because they didn't have the same buzz and energy as Houston. And we had to realize like, this isn't their 8th year in the market. This is still their 1st or 2nd year, and so we really had to like switch our perspectives and understand that component. And we grew a lot during COVID. So there's markets that we added on that we physically have never been to yet. And so we're doing a media mixer in New York, and, we added New York during COVID. So I was talking to the Brooklyn Borough President today's office, like, I just haven't had a chance to meet y'all, right? It's like I haven't had a chance to reach out and localize this project in New York because we started in COVID. And so I think that's the focus now, is like localizing the conversation. The Houston campaign is so strong because we're local. Everyone knows that it's a localized entity, and how to bring that localization to all these other cities is really what we're trying to strive for.
Yeah, that's I think now you're probably going to give me some advice, because last year when we did the event in Atlanta, there was definitely a lot of hurdles, right? And even though I had roots there, it's just a different beast. Because it's like, I went to high school there, I would visit, but not necessarily saturated, immersed in the Black business, Black marketing network. So it's like, now I'm pitching myself and it's like, who are you? Who and what? And just falling flat. So I guess any tips on maybe seeking collaboration or partnership in new markets?
So first, I would say Atlanta was the toughest market for us to grow into.
Okay.
So I would say that Atlanta was the second market we activated when we expanded outside of Houston. And so we've been in Atlanta. This will be our 7th campaign in Atlanta. I feel like it didn't start buzzing in Atlanta probably till year 5 and 6, right? Oh, wow. Last year was our best year in Atlanta. And Atlanta, so the growth really becomes in also understanding the market you're walking into. So Atlanta, same for you. If you're pitching Blackness in Atlanta, everything is Black. So it's like, okay, what's your point? Like everybody, and so you have to. And it's so many things being pitched in Atlanta, it becomes the trust factor. So it is a city where they have to see year over year and build trust with you. And once you find that, once they realize that, hey, you're not here trying to scam me, like you're sincere, you're about your business, then I think those conversations start opening up more. But, and you'll learn that about every city. Like we were more so terrified about New York, and New York has been so accommodating.
Oh, wow.
You think like New York would be a different type of beast, and it's not. So I will say, when you talk about growing into new market, it is relationship building, researching those entities, and really understanding the feel of the city. And I think once you kind of tap into that, then you kind of know how to approach it. Some places are way more community driven, like your Oakland and your Philly, so you really have to make sure you're tapped into the right local entities to even move the needle. And in other places, it is just about more like how much dollars you're going to spend or things like that. But yeah, I would say that, like, don't feel bad about Atlanta. That was like the toughest city that we've had to like grow into. And we really had to just be intentional and grow into Atlanta. So yeah.
Well, I think I think Houston and Atlanta are first cousins, right? So it only makes sense for that to be the next city. But I guess, can you give some insight as to what has been the decision-making process among your team on how to, okay, these are the next 2 to 3 markets we're considering, and then this is the final decision?
So actually, most of our growth, the start of our growth came from people reaching out to us. It still goes back to, you just never know who's watching. And just from what we were doing in Houston, and they would reach out and say, hey, I see what y'all are doing there. Can you bring it to my city? So the first couple of cities, Philadelphia, the Bay Area, New Orleans, it was more so community people reaching out to us, and that's how we would enter a city. During COVID, it was when we more so just sat down and strategically was like, okay, where do we want to grow? Where do we want to go? And we set up our campaign to be, that was the first time we did a regional campaign. We did the Midwest as a region. And we realized that could work instead of having to do all these different cities. Like, let's just highlight a region. And I think once we were able to figure out that component, we've really been able to like grow. And now we're probably in like 80% of the country, or pretty much anywhere where Black people live, we're there, because we were able to like break up the conversation that way. But yeah, I would definitely say, like you said, it's relationships and communities. So there weren't any cities we were just blindly like, let's just go in there, until we started doing the regional stuff. And because we were doing it as a regional, it allowed like the flexibility to kind of just dig in where we wanted to dig in. And, I just feel like, but I would say that like partnerships and relationships are really strong into your growth factor, right? So I would never just blindly just enter into a place without having that conversation,
What about your web analytics? Any tie-in between your web and social media analytics and to making a decision on the next city?
Not really to make a decision on the next city, but it does help in sponsorship conversations, right? Or content creation. We're able to look and see like, hey, we're getting a lot of hits from New York. So, I'm able to craft content based on New York. Or, when we are talking to sponsors, we could say, hey, we get a lot of hits from this area. So I definitely think it helps with knowing your numbers just from that standpoint. So I'm constantly looking at the analytics for that reason. Like, so I just wrote an article for Houston about upscale Black-owned restaurants in Houston, because our Google Search Console, that was a search term that kept coming up. And I was like, okay, well, clearly this is what y'all want to know. So I wrote an article for it. I've been seeing one about Philadelphia brunches. So that'll probably be the next article we write. So it kind of helps with the content piece for us.
I love it. I think one of the biggest things I love about y'all, and I get pushback for this because yes, everything is digital based and people shy away from, I'll just say, traditional marketing methods or integrated marketing methods. Obviously, y'all have networking events, activations, great social media, digital brand presence. What has been maybe 1 or 2 growth marketing strategies, tactics that has really resonated with your brand?
Digital marketing is probably the biggest growth component. I think, when you're really trying to build that digital conversation, you have to learn social media advertising, and things like that. And so that's probably been one of the biggest components. I think the events were very strategic too. So I was talking to my mentor last year, Nick. Nick Nelson out of Atlanta. He does the Brandpreneur guy. Anyways, I just claim him like, you're my mentor. But anyways, I was like, we're so lucky. And he was like, you're not lucky. You've been strategic, And so with the events, they were strategically built for us to introduce the other culinary businesses into the conversation. The Black Restaurant Week is just, of course, the restaurants, but it's like, what about the caterers? What about the food trucks? And what about the bartenders? So The events were never just random. There were still very strategic thought process into why we were hosting those events and why they naturally fit into the brand conversation we were having, right? So on our platform, we're not talking about healthcare, some people, they'll have a brand and it's like, they expect you to like address all the plagues of the Black community. It's like, no, we're food and beverage. Like, right. We know that, and we'll stick to that conversation, but we recognized we're food and beverage and not restaurants. And that was a big way for us to expand, because if I go into a city year over year and maybe they haven't had growth in the restaurant space, but in some of these other entities, or there are cities that we activate, like Richmond, Virginia with NASCAR, we're doing food truck activations with NASCAR in Richmond, Virginia. We don't really host a Black Restaurant Week in Richmond, but we're able to tap into the food truck conversation. So I just think the conversation of diversifying your model, but still sticking true to who you are and what you do and your brand, like that's probably the biggest strategy when you talk about expanding the conversation. It was that. It was like, we just weren't randomly doing events. Like, we were strategic about why that event fit in the space that we were offering.
That's dope. One thing that we've struggled with, kind of going to messaging, right? Because if you say Black Restaurant Week, and it's like, well, I don't have a restaurant. I want to bake cookies from my house and I don't qualify, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm a bartender and, I don't qualify, whatever the case may be. So did you find if people had a disconnect on what you were trying to do, or did you just kind of grow and then they, came along?
Well, I think that was the strategy of offering the events the first year. So the first year off top, we were already talking about caterers, bakeries, bartenders. So that allowed us to have that dual conversation. But yes, Derek used to say all the time, we talk too much, right? And the question is, your brand is really, what are people saying about you when you're not in the room? And the fact that even our naming conventions, like if we knew then, some of the event names and stuff probably wouldn't have been as creative as they were. We probably would have kept it real, like bartending competition, not power of the palate. Like, it was just like, we were, like I said, we were just, me and Derek's passion, like nosh, like people still be calling it noshi and all this other stuff. We're like, it's just nosh, like it's a culinary word, like it means to munch, like creative. Yeah, and you have to learn, like, okay, like, so you would see stuff like Beer and Blues Festival. Now I get why they're not creating, but that's just part of being a creative. Like, you have to learn when to turn it up and when to turn it down.
That's good.
You're not able to like over-explain to your audience like what's going on. So, but I think that's about being intentional too, and not having a one-time conversation, right? It's like, it was a brand. The fact that we built a brand, we were able to withstand COVID because we could keep having conversations about food and beverage. Like, now people know that they're just not a restaurant week. They just talk about food and beverage. And so I knew people that were doing other one-off events. And when COVID hit, they were just destroyed, because now that I can't host an event, like, what am I going to talk about? Right. And because we are always posting food, doing videos, doing things like that, like, people realize it's the brand Black Restaurant Week and not just like, a one-off thing.
Can you describe your website for those that don't know or haven't visited your website yet?
Yeah. So our website is really built like a directory, and we're still tailoring different things here and there because it has moved to this conversation, and we're trying to figure out how to keep it simple, but have robust information. So we built the Restaurant Week landing pages are really a directory, and it's built like a directory because we get hits to our website all year long. We get questions all year long about, I need a bakery in some random city. And it's like, well, go to our website, or I need a food truck for a food truck festival. So that was intentional. Like, how do we make our website resourceful? And then on our What's Cooking, that's all of our news information. And so that's where we're doing the storytelling. Like, strategically, that's the next area we're really trying to grow, is how to make our website make money for us. And so the content space is, the first year I told my content manager, just write about anything. We'll see what people like. And we were looking at the analytics and we realized all people wanted were the list. And so strategically now all of our articles are list, right? Like, here are the top 10 such and such restaurants in the city, or, so that's kind of what we've been growing into, and the recipes and all that. But we also YouTube videos, that's kind of being pulled into there. And then that's really mostly it. I mean, we do have other events and activations that we do, and we'll build out stuff for that. But at the heart, I mean, most people are really just going to be directed to the landing page or the Restaurant Week campaign, because I'm running ads directly to those pages. So, and then we have a newsletter. So our newsletter has been very great. We have a really engaged audience on our newsletter. And so we're able to also tell stories that way too. And that's one strategy I always tell my digital marketing team, period, where I'm like, hey, your goal is to get people back to our website. Like, so if it's not, like, that's the intention and the strategy that we have, right? Like, we're either pointing you back to our directory, we're pointing you back to an event, we're pointing you back to our article. And that's the strategy we always come up with. Like, what can we do to drive traffic back to our website, to get people on our newsletter list, and to grow our branding that way?
I love it. I love it. Before we wrap up, you've been mentioning partnerships. You got Warren, Derek. Any tips on finding a good business partner, communication, managing a team?
Yes, so I'm the only woman on my intercorporate partnership team. So that's been really interesting. I would say, first I'll start there. Being a woman working with men, I think it's beautiful in a sense of women like to overly plan, right? It's like you almost don't want to move unless everything is right. And men are just like, hey, we'll build it as it comes. And so you really have to learn how to work at a fast but detailed pace, right? And I think that's why I would recommend women to get in more business partnerships with men, because of that reason. I think when you build an all-female team, your planning and all that may be good, but a man is just going to drive you off a cliff sometimes. And, they have to like learn the hard way, bump their heads. But as a team, you end up learning the hard way, and you just become much more of a shark in your thinking. And, I could sit in a meeting and strategy, it's just a different type of energy that I think actually is good for women to be a part of. So that's number one, just that whole dynamic, and then I would say, for us managing others, I was having a conversation with a food photographer, and she was talking about, you start to question sometimes with team management, like, is it me? Like, am I the crazy person? And, we went through like 5 publicists before we found this publicist. And you have to learn that it's more so working style. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's not necessarily something wrong with them. It just wasn't meant to be, and the same with staffing. Sometimes you're like questioning yourself, and it's just like, maybe this person just isn't the right fit. And I think that understanding has just really helped us a lot now, because once you find the right fit, then you realize, okay, I wasn't asking for too much, or I wasn't crazy. Like, before I just hadn't found the person that fit right for the puzzle at the time. And people are seasons and reasons. Like, some people are here to be with you for that season and grow your business for that season. But when they walk away, like, they serve their purpose for your vision. So you can't like feel any type of way about that either, right? Like, they serve needs. So that's been a big like thing for us. But and then this is my last thing about the whole woman thing, because I feel like we have to stop telling women to soften themselves in the, because I get flack for that, right? And I'm like, if I'm sitting at a table with a bunch of sharks, why wouldn't I be a shark myself, right? It's like, you're not going to eat me alive,
Come on,
like,
yeah.
Like, so and I had to, and you'd be surprised the people that would tell you, like, you should soften, like, I think a society is so many women now operating in the corporate and business space and everything like that. Like, we should be okay being vocal, and listening, taking stuff in. But I just kind of cringe when I hear people that like say that. And you're just like, I just, like I said, like sometimes I'm sitting in a room and I'm literally the only female. So I'm not going to like quiet myself or my perspective because of that. Like, I just think I bring more value, because you'll notice something and you'll be like, you could tell a woman wasn't on the team, right? It could be something as simple as like people talk about walking into a restaurant and there's no like look for the purse under the bar, and there wasn't a woman on the team, because
the details.
Yes, matter.
Consideration, that is true. Because I'm going to think about my good or bad experience, and I'm going to try to implement it into what I'm doing this event, hoping that other people will have a good experience.
Right. So I think, I definitely think the dual gender kind of conversations, I think they're good. Like, I think as a woman, don't be afraid to get some men on your team. And men, like, don't be afraid to listen to the women on your team, because that's even worse too, when you have women on your team and they suggest something and then the next man says the same thing. And, I just think if everyone learns from each other, like, this project is a testament to how we've grown because of that, right? Just being able to take in all these different energies, and we grow different ways with it.
I love it. I love it. Okay. I feel like now we need like a woman in marketing summit or something.
No, I know. It's like, it's really been interesting, because you don't want to say, and it's flip side. So on our foundation, it's all women, right?
Oh,
it's
okay.
Like, our board is like men and women, but the staffing is all women. And so it has been interesting even from that perspective. But yeah, I love the guys. Like, like I said, we're like family. And like, I definitely think we all just bring something completely different. But for personally me, I've had to really learn how to like process, think, and move a lot faster than I think I ever would have if I was doing something.
That's good. That's good. All right. So we're going to have you on the Growth Marketing Strategies panel. What are you looking forward to regarding the Marketing for the Culture Summit?
I think just being in the room. I will say that from my experience with Black Restaurant Week, when we would host NOSH, the biggest response from the chefs participating was like, I haven't been in a room with other professionals that look like me. And I just think there's so much power in that. And it's so much positive energy around that. Like, all the thought of competition, all that stuff goes away. Like, at NOSH, we would have like all the soul food families of Houston took a photo together in their shirts, right? Like Esther's and Mickey's, and this is it. And you would think like, oh, but no, like, it's all love. And so I think just being in the room with like-minded visuals, like, that look like you is so powerful, especially in this field, because I tell my interns all the time, you're going to get out in the workplace and it's not going to look like this, and so I just think there's so much power in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely the response that we got last year in Atlanta. And it's like, I know we're out here. It's just, where are we? Right. Instead of, one-off situations or just maybe just a general networking event, like, okay, let's kind of teach and learn from each other. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to have the kickoff reception on May 31st at Upper Kirby Bistro. And then we're having the VIP brunch on Friday, June 2nd at Davis Street. Both restaurants were found on the Black Restaurant Week website /directory.
And we know y'all have Joseph speaking as the keynote. So Joseph actually introduced us to doing some marketing activations in Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
About COVID. If you ever seen our thing where we're doing like activations for like movie studios or TV shows, that was all like, so yes, we definitely love it. Yes, that was happy. And I would say that too, moving out, like food fits into every space. So definitely always call us. Like our tagline is more than just a week. We're here 365. And so as you're thinking about event planning, or with Joseph, we did virtual press dinners where we would send food to all the different press people's homes while they would watch like the premiere of a show. Yeah. So like, the food just fits in so many conversations, and we're starting to move into corporate diversity conversations using food as that space. That's why we work with NASCAR and Levy and Live Nations. It's really been about bringing diversity in through the food space. So that's been
I love it. I love it. I mean, I went to the media mixer a month or two ago. And at that time, we were looking for a caterer. Definitely had conversations with a few people before we made a decision. But for me, in the middle of planning my event, like that was the exposure I needed. Because it's like you see people online and it's like, but then for me to kind of taste, more importantly, have a conversation, see who they are, their personality. It was a really good event. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you do with the community. All the communities, marketers, creatives, the restaurants. Anything else you would like to add?
I probably say I always have to do my last pitch. It's always about our foundation. So the grant program, we do hire consultants. And so the consultants, like I said, the restaurants are able to pick which area of expertise they need support in. So if you are just interested in consulting, just let us know. We do provide you a stipend, so it's not a volunteer thing. But it's another great way to give back to the community and really kind of help small businesses kind of grow and prosper and sustain. So we've had everything from and same thing, like I pull people from my network. So if I see dope designers doing stuff online and packaging, I bring them in and say, hey, design the packaging for this Ethiopian restaurant in New York. Or we've had really dope designer doing like websites. We bring in our so even for the websites, we bring in we fly in our food photographer and she takes all the photos, right? So by the time the person is designing their website, they have all these beautiful imagery of the food. And it's, like I said, we really are intentional. So I'm definitely looking for some creatives who will love to teach restaurants everything from on a call we had with you and the intro to the speakers. We actually reached out to one of the people on the call. Is like, hey, you do Facebook classes. Can we, long story short, we're looking for that type of insight to bring into our foundation network to really help the restaurants from marketing and digital advertising and things like that as well.
Yeah, I heard about that. I was so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, like I said, we're always listening, watching. Like I love pulling people in. I think that's the strength that we bring. Like we're always going to reach back and pull somebody into the conversation. So if you're interested, just let us know and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So with that being said, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yes, Falayn at blackrestaurantweeks.com. Definitely you could email me, or you could reach out like partners at blackrestaurantweeks.com. But definitely hit us up, for anything and we'll be able to kind of take it from there.
I love it. So we'll definitely have the website as well as the contact information in the show notes. As always, thank you for being a guest. Thank you for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. Remember, I believe in you. Thank you for listening to Marketing for the Culture podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, whether it's on Apple, Google, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And of course, our videos are on YouTube. If you have a moment, feel free to give us a rate, review, or just comment. We appreciate our sponsors for their continuous support. Also, if you're interested in learning more about our sponsors or becoming a member of the African American Marketing Association, visit aa-ma.org.